Coming up on UGTV, Board of Commission meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Thank you for attending tonight's commission meeting, and at this time, I'm going to call our meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call. Mugia. Here. Johnson.
Here.
King. Here. Markley.
Here.
Walters. Philbrook.
Here.
Burrows.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan. Bynum.
Here. This evening, we're going to ask Commissioner Johnson to provide us an invocation, and if you would stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
May we bow our heads. God of all eternity, we come to you tonight. We thank you for this opportunity to be here. We thank you for our life, the life that you've given us. Thank you for our health, our strength, and the mind to serve our community. We pray tonight that you would give us wisdom to govern this community, Lord. There are many issues that we are faced with, many challenges. We ask, God, that you would give us wisdom to serve this community, that we will serve it in the interest of all of its constituencies, from the greatest to the least. We pray this in Jesus' name.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson, for the invocation. I'd like to ask the clerk if there are any revisions to tonight's agenda.
There are no revisions.
Thank you. Our first order of business tonight is the appointment of one member from each of the two leading political parties to witness destruction of ballots. In the past, Commissioners Markley and Kane and I've done it one time. I want to ask if the two of you would be willing to volunteer for that. The destruction of ballots, we have to have one
It's whenever we schedule it.
You can schedule it at your convenience.
I'm in.
Okay, so is that a motion to appoint Commissioner Markley and Kane?
I so move.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second appointing Commissioners Markley and Kane to witness the destruction of ballots. Roll call, please.
Roll call Mugia,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane, Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Philbrook,
Aye.
Burrows, Townsend,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to our consent agenda. Does any member of the commission, staff, or citizen in attendance tonight wish to set aside any item on tonight's consent agenda? We need to step forward at this time and state your name and city of residency and ask that that item be set aside.
Ed Giskinny, Kansas City, Kansas. I ask that item number 1 be set aside.
Thank you. Are there any other items?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Could I have roll call on that motion?
Roll call Mugia,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane, Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Philbrook,
Aye.
Burrows, Townsend,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to the set-aside item, which is consent agenda item number 1, amendments to our rental licensing. We have Mr. Ryan Haga here from Legal Department.
Good evening, Commissioners. This item is an amendment to our rental licensing ordinance that simply adds a requirement that any landlord who is or potential landlord that's applying for either a rental license or a renewal of rental license, not having any other rental dwelling that has been on the unfit or demolition list for a period of 12 months or longer. There's also a small change regarding the wording of the requirement that a rental that in order to get a rental license, you can't have any past due property taxes at the time of application or renewal. If you have any questions, I'm here along with Rachel Miskey to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission have any comments or questions on this item? Mr. Giskinny, would you like to make a comment on this item?
Thank you. You're going to have the dubious pleasure of hearing me twice tonight on 2 different issues, and I assume that's why the trash cans are here, because you heard I was coming. But anyway, the little item that he just mentioned is the big item to me. It's not on the consent agenda, and I'm not sure why it isn't. If a person owns 12 properties, based on what I'm reading in the ordinance, and one of them gets behind, that would preclude any of the rental properties from being relicensed or licensed. I remind you that there's been times in the past where, say specifically 2008 through 2012, where good people had problems, and sometimes they got behind. And you're going to take all that property off the list of rental property in the city, and I think that's a pretty tough thing to do. Once it's in place, once you pass this ordinance, there really can't be any exceptions to the rule. I would suggest that you take that part of it off and just continue to work with people trying to get their taxes paid up. The good landlords are always going to obey the best they can. Like everything else in the rental licensing thing, though, the bad landlords, and I shouldn't even say bad landlords, the bad people are going to find ways to beat the system in one form or another. And I can tell you right now, I've already found a way to beat that behind the tax thing, and I'm not going to do it because I'm not a bad person, but other people will. So let's be careful. We keep talking about wanting affordable housing in this city. 47% of the city, like most cities, are rental properties. Let's try to work with investors instead of working against them.
Thank you. Mr. Haga.
Commissioners, I just wanted to point out that the paragraph 7, which I believe is what Mr. Skinny is referring to, is kind of its own independent point, which is to say it's not similar to the requirement that all properties have to have past due taxes paid or are within 12 months. In fact, it just reflects the practice that we've had going for up to this point for years, quite frankly. And it also makes a statement that it's not considered past due if the homeowner goes onto a payment plan through the court, which is something obviously they're allowed to do if it indeed falls far enough back in back taxes to actually go to the tax sale.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Markley? Oh, I'm ready.
Move to approve this item.
We have a motion and a second to approve the item as presented. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Mukia. Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to the remaining items on the consent agenda. If I could have a motion to approve those items.
We've already approved those.
We've done that?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. All right. Now, we have one item on the Standing Committee agenda. This item was presented to our Public Works and Safety Standing Committee on April 23rd. We received a vote of 5-1 for approval. We recommended staff present a trial trash and recycling services program to the full commission. So at this time, I'm going to ask staff to proceed with that presentation. I think I'll hand it to Mr. Bach, and then you can hand it to staff.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Tonight's presentation, we wanted to talk about an opportunity we have to do a trial program with Waste Management for receptacles that can be put out into 3 different areas in the community. One thing I'll note, the key to the presentation, or the key that we're coming forward to you tonight, is just to take this idea out to neighborhood community groups, show them how it works, present to them so we can get the feedback from them, and then we can bring that information back to you before we go into implementation mode. So this is really an opportunity for us to, we'll tell you about the program tonight in more detail. Then we want to take it out and explain it to the residents how it can work and get their feedback before we put anything in place. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Sieben, Jeff Fisher, and Tim Nick. I'm not sure who's first, so go ahead.
Okay, good evening, thank you. And staff and Waste Management will be here after the presentation. For any folks in the audience that might have questions or concerns, we can address them then. We'll be happy to do that. So staff initiated this idea over a year ago, and it really came down to one thing. There was one driver behind it, and it's recycling. In KCK, we have a low participation rate and a very low diversion rate. We began exploring ideas. We came to the conclusion that we needed to test various ideas, various options. Other communities, many communities have done this before, and we're just following their lead. Since the Standing Committee discussion and the comments made, staff has done some homework, done some benchmarking of other communities that have contracted waste, and had additional discussions with Waste Management about developing the trial. I'm going to share the presentation with Melissa and Tim and hand it over to Melissa for a second.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Commission. So tonight what we want to do is start out with the kind of the first of the 2 prongs of what Jeff was alluding to as to why we're before you tonight. One was the identification about the diversion rate, which Jeff's already mentioned, but the other was that SOAR, looking at what we could do to enhance appearance and safety in the community, ran upon the fact that one of the things that we've noticed is that there's often, as number 1 here states, refuse and recycling blowing around our neighborhoods on trash days. And then that, of course, lingers past our trash days and then leaves things caught up, making our community not look as good. And additionally, we also noticed that we don't have a standardized appearance like many communities do on trash day, where it's, you know, just kind of the same rows of things sitting out and it looks much cleaner and nicer. So those were the 2 things that SOAR was looking at to help address what you'll see here on the second screen, which is the first red arrow on the left there talks about how our residents feel about the appearance of Wyandotte County. And you can see there that though we made some gains this last cycle between 2016 and 2018, over on the right here, what you'll see is the benchmarking with the Kansas City Metro and the U.S. average, where we are more than half of those other surveyed areas and how we feel about our appearance. So that's why SOAR really started looking at what could we do to help with appearance. And we feel that what we're bringing forward to you starts to give our residents an opportunity to make an impact on appearance and the cleanliness of their neighborhoods.
Okay, and as I mentioned a minute ago, recycling being the #1 driver initially, you can see that KCK's diversion rate is extremely low, and compared to the state at 31%, and national average, I believe, is around 32%. So simply want to make that point, and we'll go to the next slide. This one, we thought we'd talk a little bit about one of the biggest drivers behind recycling across the nation is regarding the life cycle cost of landfills and the fact that there's not a lot of them. They're not easy to permit. Whether it's publicly owned or private landfill, they're a regional asset, right? We need to do everything we can to extend the life of those landfills. So the cost to construct a landfill is extraordinary. It's around $2 million just to locate one, a new one, and permit it through the EPA. It's about $75,000 per acre to construct it, and then of course you've got the O&M costs for its life. So very expensive. It's in our best interest to do everything we can as a community to help extend the life of those landfills and to manage costs for us and those after us. This is very important amongst the community, very supportive of change, 49% and somewhat supportive at 24%. So I think there's an appetite. It seems like there's an appetite for change. That's the direction we're recommending. Of course, in the citizen survey, street maintenance was the #1 priority amongst the community. Of course, we've talked about our new approach to street preservation, data-driven, more techniques to extend the life of our pavement. You've supported pothole patchers. We purchased 2 of those. One's in service now, and one's on the way. We're looking at things like reducing pavement, road diets, low level of service roads that may not be servicing much, take those out, right? And however small the reduction of trucks on the road would be through this proposal, if we just reduce 1 to 2 trucks a day in our waste pickup program, it's an improvement to the street system, right? And in fact, trash trucks, fully loaded, are among the 2 or 3 heaviest trucks per axle on the road. So anything we can do there helps.
So we also wanted to provide some benchmarking information just for the metro and surrounding counties, what they're doing for their services if they're contracted through the city or provided by a city. The critical part here to note is that this is not, in many communities, how it is done, so it's kind of a split. Sometimes the community leaves it up to either the individual or homeowners associations, and we see a combination of this throughout the metro. We happen to be a community that contracts for the service for the whole community. So the top part here are some Johnson County communities and sort of how they handle it. A bulk of them have one provider that they've got their services through a co-op purchase with Mid-America Regional Council. You'll see that they generally have their curbside container varies from 65 to 96 gallons, and it's not listed as unlimited like you'll see down in the bottom portion for Kansas City, Kansas. And you'll see that they do have bulky item pickup and that they have a similar situation with their curbside recycling carts, as we've got demonstrated here tonight, and a variety of different ways they handle yard waste. What's critical here is what we're looking at in this trial is one version, but we're actually looking to get feedback throughout the trial to understand sort of what the right mix that these other communities have landed on. What's our mix? What's that going to look like? And this is just another set of those that you can see kind of the variations in what folks across the metro are doing But what you will see is that we are the only one that's truly unlimited. With that, I'm turning the rest of this presentation over to Tim Nick.
Thank you, Melissa. What we're looking at proposing if the trial program is approved is Public Works staff has met with staff from Waste Management, and we selected 3 different areas. And how we chose these, the first, we tried to pick an area that was all 3 that were different in how they were set up. The Northridge area, which we had some interest in carts. We chose that area, kind of wide open, not much on-street parking. We chose the Strawberry Hill area, which is a lot of on-street parking, some alleys, really a challenge. Waste Management has dealt with these kind of issues in the past, so we thought that would be a good test for them. And then the Highland Crest area, kind of a combination of both, so that's why we went with those 3. These areas are not set in stone. I mean, if we decide we can tweak the areas, if we want to keep them close to where they are, we can tweak them. They want to stay close to 1,000 houses total. So that's why we can do that. Or we could scratch one area and go with another if that's what's decided. The trial period will be, once we implement it, it will be a 6-month test period. And at the end of that, we'll evaluate the results and come back and see where we want to go from there. Trial program is at no cost to the unified government. We're not paying a penny on this at all. The way it's set up is all the trial areas that are chosen, each resident would receive 2 95-gallon carts. And of the 2 that are here, it's the one with the black lid is the 95-gallon. Each of those holds approximately 5 to 8 of the 13-gallon kitchen trash bags. Trash service would be picked up weekly like it is now. The trial areas, they would be picked up on the same day that they're picked up now. They're not changing days, so they would pick up those same days. So the Highland Crest area and the Northridge area are both on Friday routes, and then Wednesday for Strawberry Hill. The recycling will be picked up every other week at this point, and there's unlimited recycling. So if for 2 weeks, if you've got your 95-gallon barrels full, you can put it in another barrel or any other kind of container, and they will take as much recycling as you have out there. There's no additional cost for the basic service during the pilot program. The cart volume on the trash is limited and includes yard waste. So if you've got grass clippings and that, it needs to fit inside the 95-gallon cart. And this is to encourage recycling, like Jeff mentioned earlier. If you've got more than 95 gallons and you want to do something else, they do have a sticker program, which basically they sell a sheet of stickers, and we would have those for sale at various places, probably like our Fleet Center, Public Works, where you could purchase 10 stickers for like $12.50. So it's $1.25 a sticker. And so if you've got your barrel full, you could put it on the bag that you have, and they know that you paid for it, and you can go that way. Bulky items, your mattresses, your big items, we would still have that for the trial areas. They would be picked up on the first week of the month at no additional cost. However, there is going to be, you have to call in within 48 hours of your pickup day so they can schedule that, because they just don't want trash trucks, because it'll be an additional truck that picks up the bulky items. So they don't want to just have a truck just driving and only maybe have to pick up 1 or 2 bulky item things. So that's why they have that. Another option that if you think you're going to have more than 95 gallons every week, you can rent an additional 95-gallon cart for $5 a month through Waste Management. I know you can't really see those, but I think you guys seen that these are the maps for the areas, and like I said, they can be tweaked or changed. This would be a 3-phase program that we'd implement. We developed the trial address areas, which we've already done. We're going to engage the customers, either Public Works, Waste Management staff, or possibly a third party through open houses, surveys to collect feedback to bring back to you guys for a decision on how you would like to move forward with this. If it's decided we're going to go with the trial program, then we determine the execution date of phase 2. Waste Management would formulate their cart delivery process and dates, and then through a joint invitation and mailer from the UG and Waste Management, it would go out with some information and provide the dates that would be starting and then when their carts would be delivered. During this whole process, Waste Management and Public Works staff will be developing a list of FAQs for not only their customer service team, but as well as our 311, our Public Works staff, to address any calls that come in during the program if they have questions on what's going on. Phase 2 would then be the delivery of the carts. Predetermined Waste Management has a third party that delivers the carts for them. The program, trial program would start and be like approximately 6 months. Again, with the FAQs, Waste Management, 311 would train both staffs to address any of the residents' calls that come in if they have questions. The big key is capturing as much information as they can, you know, what the problem is, so we can go there. We'll have regular scheduled meetings between Waste Management and our staff just to evaluate how things are going on and check the data and evaluate the program if there's any changes that need to be tweaked while the trial program is going on. Near the end of the program, we'll create a reminder communication that the date that it's going to be ending and how the carts will then be collected. There'll be an opportunity. Waste Management will have a link for a post survey. They'll have that. They'll be in the information in the flyer, and they'll also have door hangers that have that so they can get a hold of them and make their survey results. Phase 3, developing the online survey for all the residents of the pilot program only. Then another communication would go out from Waste Management and the UG, letting them know how long they'll have. They'll have a 2-week window at the end to fill out their online survey. And then once we get that, we get all the findings, get our data, how the complaints came in, and they would bring that back to the commission. So again, like Mr. Bach said, what we're here for tonight is we're asking for commission approval to meet with these community groups in the 3 selected areas to present the trial program information, how it works, and then we would bring those findings back to commission and see how we want to move forward. And we're here for any questions.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that the request tonight is authorization to have staff go into these 3 specific neighborhoods for extended public engagement prior to bringing your findings back to the public and to us, the commission. At that point, we would make a decision on moving forward with a trial. Is that correct? Thank you. We have some comments and questions from the commission. Commissioner Philbrook.
Thank you. First off, I want to thank administration and staff for listening to the Public Works Standing Committee about our concerns with how this had been brought forward. So thank you for backing up and letting the citizenry have a chance to put their 2 cents worth in before we do this. Having said that, I know that we need some changes, and I'm hoping we find out really what works for our community in this, because one of the reasons that we created the original, I shouldn't say we, I wasn't up here, but one of the reasons that it was created to have a universal supplier of this waste pickup was because we had a lot of trash, and we kind of got trashy. And sometimes people don't always pick up their trash, and they don't always take care of it. So we created this so we could clean up our community. But now I think we've kind of moved past that a little bit, but we also realize that we still have to have carriers that are going to pick up our trash and really do it, you know, because some of the things we hear most about is from the change of, and I got to mention the past just a little bit, is that Waste Management has not had a good name in our community since we switched over from Deffenbaugh. And I've had more complaints in that time period than I ever did before. So my concern is, and I want to say this, is that can they really follow through, and will they really follow through on what they say they're going to do? And are they really going to be good partners? That's one of my big complaints about this, and this is what I'm hearing, and this is my problem with it. Other than that, I think it's to the point where they really just need to prove they need to prove to us that we get what they say they will do. That it's not just all promises and then, you know, they still don't respond to folks, they still don't pick up properly in certain areas and that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that this will bring more of it to light, and that I know that even though we have penalized them for not doing what they're doing, I don't know if we've penalized them enough. I don't know. We'll have to see. Thanks.
Commissioner Kane.
Which commissioner brought this forward? Normally something, I've been here 13 years. And in 13 years, I've never seen something this big go by without somebody from the commission sitting on the committee helping make those decisions.
This came forward from staff, Commissioner.
Well, staff made a mistake. And here's why. We've had 1,312 complaints by district. First one, 87. Second, 86. Third, 53. Fourth, 87. Mine, 126. Markley, 77. Walters, 50. Philbrick, 90. We've had all these complaints, and staff goes around what I think and says, well, we're going to do this, and it's not going to be a real big deal. It's a huge deal. Here's a list of all the complaints of all the people that have called in and said, you know what, they're not doing their job. And another thing, it's kind of interesting. The UG isn't going to pay for it because the other day the UG was going to pay for it. Is that right or wrong?
We continue to negotiate on this issue because it was.
We went out there and we said we were going to pay for it. That's what they said at the standing committee.
That is correct.
That's exactly what they said.
It came forward, that was an issue with standing committee, and we took that back.
It should have never been. These guys haven't done a good job since they got there. And now we're going to go out in the community and say we're going to give all these districts this, which is fine, and 6 months later you can take it back. And it will work in that's my housing addition. It will work in the housing addition. But multiple people have complained. They haven't done their job, so let's do a pilot. Why don't you do your job first? You know, they're not deploying enough trash trucks. Monday was trash day for me. They picked mine up at 6:45 on Tuesday morning. There was over 40 service days of large sections not picked up on scheduled trash recycling. On a 2017 MARC recycling survey, 68.9% of the residents not willing to pay for trash services based on the amount of trash set out. If you drive around everybody's trash day and you see all these trash bags outside, there's a heck of a lot more than just that. And if the Wyandotte Daily, there's 17 complaints just since the survey, since we did that, 17 complaints about what we really want is we want them to do their job. And I've never heard of us, and yeah, they negotiated, but it should have never been negotiated. They should have said, we want to do this, and we'll do it for free. But how much is the cost of that? And then who's going to pay for it? And then when we go to these people, and it will not be me because I'd be biased, I think we need to get 2 commissioners on that committee so the commission has a voice on there, because this is the first time in 13 years that we didn't have a voice on the commission to help make a decision that's that huge. And I'm extremely disappointed on how that went down, and I cannot believe that staff said, well, and then when they presented it, well, you know, we're going to get these credits and it's going to be great. It's not great. And that's not what we do up here. What we do up here, and we've done this several times, it's always been Angela and McKiernan, and they say, all right, we're going to sit on this committee, they're going to come back and they're talk to us, and then they're going to tell us, instead of going to a standing committee, having a meeting there, all this, oh, we're going to do all these great things, and they haven't done anything in the first place. When they're not doing their job, if I did my job like this, I'd get fired. And I wish we could go to somebody else. But there are people out here complaining to us. This is the list, telling us we don't like it. If you read the Wyandotte Daily, it specifically tells you what they really want to do is they want the recycling bins with lids on them, a little bit bigger. That's what they want. But to sit there at a standing committee and staff say, oh, we got this deal and it's going to work and it's going to do this and it's going to do that, if they'd have done their job in the first place, we wouldn't be where we're at now. And I'm extremely frustrated and disappointed in staff for not getting somebody on the commission to go with them, to do the surveys, to talk to the people, because we're elected, we have to answer to these phone calls. We're the ones that they call and say, you know what? And here's what's funny, on that list, some of us have called in and said, hey, here's the complaint. And it's extremely frustrating to have staff do that, and I don't want staff to do anything like that again.
Thank you. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. Commissioner Kane raised a point. This trial, what is it? What is the intention of it? Because I get his point, and I appreciate that with what we have now, how is trash collection being handled? I will say my day was Tuesday, and I don't know if people are on vacation or what, but when I left this morning, it still hadn't been picked up. That's a different issue than what it's picked up in outside. In looking at the trial areas that are identified, I'm more familiar with Strawberry Hill, of course, not so much with the other ones, but I'm not sure that we take into account with this trial areas that are representative of places that have housing authority issues. How is that going to be handled with something like this? And what concerns me for my constituents would be increased cost. And I'm moving forward on this. I understand this is about a trial. But if these costs for uniformity are passed on to the constituents, can constituents opt out of this? What's going to be the recourse if they say, I can't afford that on my bill anymore? So these are just some thoughts I have, and I'm not sure that in the trial that we're doing, some of the neighborhoods representative of what's in my district are included in that trial. There may be a whole different kind of consideration there. So I would ask that we look at the trial areas, and if you can identify for me out of these three how that looks like what you would find in District 1, and you have a lot of scattered site housing with housing authority, how's that going to look? Thank you.
I might add, Commissioner, one of the big reasons for bringing this forward, and they touched on it, they didn't spend much time on it in the presentation, but one of the reasons to bring this forward to the Commission for input on the idea and to the community to see how we would go about something like this is based on the future. If you look at volumes of trash, our costs will continue to escalate. So if we don't defer waste away from that, and we have a good long-term contract, I'm very proud of that, negotiated it through 2032. So it's in play. It still has escalators in there based on volumes and costs to take care of waste. So we want to put our community in a good position going forward to divert trash away from the landfill, or those costs will come back to our community and we'll start seeing our rates go up at a higher rate. So it's one of those things we're looking ahead to the future with this.
Commissioner Kane.
I want to make sure that we have two commissioners working with staff on this issue if it passes forward.
Do we have other comments or questions? I want to put forward that if we have two commissioners that will agree to work with staff to move forward, would you be willing? No, okay, but you're just not gonna.
If they'd have done their job, if they'd have done what we paid them to do, I wouldn't care. And that's no joke. I mean, when you go to the gas station and you're buying gas, you want a full tank of gas, right? You don't want the thing shut off at halfway and then charged all the way. You know, and this piss poor planning does not constitute an emergency on our part. I actually think we need to sit down. We should add 3-on-3s on this. We should add meetings where they're saying, this is going to happen. Do you have any ideas as commissioners? Because you commissioners are going to take the hit on this, not us. And people say, well, this is where I was from. If they don't like the way it here, go somewhere else. But before we move forward, we need to take a step back and say, are they really doing their job? And let's form this committee now and then have that committee come back to us all of us, at a 5 o'clock special session.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Merkley.
I would be willing to volunteer to be a part of whatever committee discussions
Thank
go
you.
forward.
Commissioner Murguia.
I would not be willing to volunteer on that committee.
Gee, thanks.
Sorry, Angela. I'll committee with you some other time. But I do want to say, Commissioner Kane does bring up a good point, and I haven't said it, but since everyone else is in some public forum, the trash in my district was always picked up regularly by DEFMA and always early in the morning, and there was never any leftovers, and all pieces of your trash can or your disposable device that you used was all there when they were done. And I left to come up here tonight because Thursday is my district's trash day, and I left to come up here tonight, and I was late. It was after 5, and their trash was still in front of my house and in front of all my neighbors' house, which is an extreme difference. It's been that way now for months, and sometimes I will get calls wondering it'll be dark outside before they show up to pick up our trash. I haven't said anything, but since Commissioner Kane brought it up, I thought it was appropriate time to bring it up. I'm not opposed to this concept or idea, but like Commissioner Kane, he does bring a really good point. We're trying a good idea. And I've told Melissa that. I agree with that concept and the idea. What I'm concerned about is we're adding another idea to a provider who hasn't been able to do their job to begin with, like Commissioner Kane said. So I do have some concerns there, but not about the idea. Just so you're clear, I think the bins are great.
Thank you. So other comments, questions? I'm wondering if we can, Mr. Bach, take a step back even from just the authorization to go into the neighborhoods and maybe back up a step to a more study involvement with the commission. If I can get one more volunteer to be a part of that. Oh, you're volunteering, Commissioner McKiernan. Let me say this. Let me say this. If Commissioner McKiernan would be the second commissioner in addition to Merkley, that would be great. And I will offer myself as the standby second commissioner. So would that be acceptable then? It's a different motion and a different action item than what's in front of us. So maybe a motion to capture the step back, add 2 commissioners to a staff committee to bring forward something for the future. Commissioner Murguia.
No, Commissioner Bynum, I would tell you that I think it's fine what Commissioner Kane has proposed. I think we let the test go through. It's a great, staff has done a lot of work on it, but keep the 2 commissioners involved, whoever those 2 are, to monitor it, really watch it, see how it's going, look at it from a commission and public perspective. I think that's great to let it go through as is.
Okay, so a modified motion that we're simply allowing the authorizing the action as it's been brought and adding the 2 commissioners. Is that a motion? All right. Second. Okay. We have a motion and a second on the item that adds the 2 commission voices into that process. Can we have roll call on that motion?
Roll call Mugia,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane, Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Philbrook,
Aye.
Burrows,
No.
Townsend,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 7-2. That motion carries.
Thank you. We have one item under the administrator's agenda. I'm going to ask Administrator Doug Bach to present the item.
The item before you is moving forward with our bond issuance, which is being done in accordance with the Legends Garage and West Lawn project. This is one we've already brought the development agreement forward some time ago, as how the actual project would be done. Last commission meeting, we came forward and identified to you how we were going to amend the agreement in order to make this work forward after just a little bit of time had lapsed. We do have a presentation if you would like us to step through it. We were just moving forward with the bond issue that is being done in accordance with this project. I can move through this if I get the.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Mugia. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. And that concludes this portion of our regular meeting, and I'll adjourn us in that capacity and call us back into order as the Land Bank Board of Trustees.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on all items on the Land Bank consent agenda. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley. Aye. Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
That concludes our meeting for this evening. We're adjourned. Thank you.